Welcome to the College Knowledge Podcast, sponsored by the College Planning Network and Paradigm Financial Group. Whether you're searching for that right fit college, applying to college, or figuring out how you're going to afford it all, you're in the right place. You'll hear from deans, admissions counselors, student athletes, and scholars from esteemed universities and colleges around the country. We'll dig deep to uncover their insight and unique experiences. So whether you're a student gearing up for college or a parent with college-bound kids, sit back, relax, and listen. Like you, we have lots of questions. Our guests have the answers, and we're excited to share them with you. Let's get started. We want to help. Send your questions to info@collegeknowledge.net. These can be about college, finances, careers, and anything else you have questions on. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to College Knowledge. I'm your host, Dave Kozak, flying solo today. And today we've invited on the show Julie Kelsheimer with Great Minds Advising. Julie, welcome to the show.
Hi, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So give us a little background of what you do and who you work for and how you're all connected, and we'll start off on our conversation from there.
Okay, great. So I'm an independent college advisor through Great Minds Advising. We're the college advising branch of Westchester Prep, which is a large tutoring and test prep company right outside of New York City. Got it.
So, and Julie, because obviously we're going to talk about college admissions and the kind of battle that students face. Can you give us a little bit of your journey, how you got into this and where'd you go to school and how did your kind of process to start helping people in this start?
Sure, absolutely. So I got my bachelor's and my master's degrees from Northwestern University. And I actually got them in music performance. So I spent a lot of time traveling and singing opera. That's what I was trained to do. And I had a minor in theater. I did really miss teaching though. And I had taught private voice students during my graduate studies. And so after a handful of years of just primarily singing, I came back to St. Louis, where I'm from, and I became a faculty member at 2 universities. And so I really got to dig into working with college students, which I really, really enjoyed. And that became more of my full-time position. I also worked in the private realm with a lot of students. So I was able to work with middle schoolers, high schoolers, and then in the university setting, the college students. And I naturally found myself helping through their college admissions process. And I really, really enjoyed that one-on-one work with them. Mm-hmm. And so now I've transitioned into doing that full-time. And I think it's kind of a unique perspective having worked with that kind of student for so long.
Absolutely. So, and you know, we talk a lot in this show and really in business in the 20 years of being an entrepreneur, about mentorship. And so, you know, I make the case every day that not only do mentors help me in my business and all that, but along the way in life, you find mentors that have an impact on you. And I think you and I both spend a lot of time mentoring young students in doing this the right way. Do you agree with that?
Oh, I absolutely agree. I think I think students, if you let them, they can trust you, and they really do look to you for guidance, not just academically or with college or whatever, but they look to you for time management, for organization, for motivation in their day-to-day life. It's really, I think it's a privilege to be that person for students.
I agree. And so, and I want to dovetail that into a conversation that we do a decent amount of work with student athletes, right? Pursuing playing in college. And so one of the things that I learned very early, and I was a college athlete, went to Franklin and Marshall College in Pennsylvania. And so the coaches don't really ever want to talk to the parents, right? And a general rule in the college process is the college doesn't really want to talk to the parents, right? They really don't. And so the child has to own this whole decision process. And so I think companies like yours and mine do a great job to give them the confidence that they can own it, right? Because the one thing that I think is lacking is critical decision making, right? We don't really teach that as a skill set. And this is a critical decision, right? I mean, if you think about what we're really asking a student, it's where's the first place you want to go when you move out of your house, your comfort zone, right? And then what do you want to do for the rest of your life? Like that's the decision we're putting on a 16, 17, 18-year-old mind. And we know that the mind's not developed until it's 28 to 30 years old, maybe 26 if you're ahead of the curve. But so how much time do you spend? And I love how you put it, the time management, the mentorship, and the like, we're helping them in this process. how much time do you spend on helping students come to the conclusion they have to make a decision? Because we're a big punt society when it comes to decisions right now. We like to just, we'll put our head in the sand and we'll push that one down the road.
Mm-hmm. Well, like you said, colleges don't want to talk to the parents. The parents and the families are a huge part of this decision. They have to be. Yep. But what we try to work with when we work with a student is not just, which courses are you choosing or how are we going to apply? What's your strategic positioning? We're working on executive functioning and on demonstrated interest. So this is saying, if you're passionate about a school or you're passionate about something, you as the student have to be the one to show your interest. You need to show up to the college fair. You need to shake hands with the admissions rep, and you need to be the one to follow up with a thank you email, et cetera. Colleges take note of that, not just the interest, but the responsibility on the part of the student. So I think part of my job as their advisor too is to guide them in that way. And it should be a genuine interest. I mean, if they're truly excited by a school, you want them to follow through with that.
Yeah, and we're teaching those skill sets you're teaching. Those are lifetime skill sets, right? Someone does a kind deed or has a good interaction. It's a natural tendency to thank them for the interaction, whether it be email or written note or whatever. Mm-hmm. So it's a fantastic point you make on the kind of the follow through nature of things, and you have to take action. And I want to dial back to the demonstrated interest component, because for so long, it was a waning environment of demonstrated interest, and everybody kind of just like, they started kind of not taking it into consideration, or it was just diminishing, right? Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, COVID hits, and now the only way that they can understand demonstrated interest, and for the listeners, the colleges did something that they were forced to do under COVID restrictions, which was they had to change how they did their admissions process. It was a upheaval of everything that we knew for so long.
Right.
And in doing so, they sort of modernized their technology, and they started dialing into analytics, and they started doing what every good business does and measures the output, the return, the open rates, the click rates, the attendance rates, and things like that to find this demonstrated interest. And so now you see, and they took away the SAT, right? And they started like every school went test optional for 3 years. And now schools are starting to come back online where they're going, no, we need that number back in our lives. But demonstrated interest became a game changer for people. And so, and I want to talk about yield for a second, because I know this and I'm sure you do, but I want to educate the listeners. The yield for a college, right? If you're looking at US News and World Report, or you're looking at Niche, or you're looking at all these places that rank schools, and they give you a first through 100 in all different categories, schools are fighting for those rankings, right? And a way they fight for the rank is their yield percentages. And so what yield is the idea that they want to give out as few acceptances as they possibly can to get their beds filled, right? So that's the business end of the deal. But what that means is that if you're a student that has all the marks, all the grades, and has done the background to get into the school, but you showed no interest, they have an algorithm that kicks out and says, this person never attended a thing, don't offer, because the probability of them attending is very low, right? And so demonstrated interest comes back into play in a huge way now.
Yeah, it does. And I think it does vary per school. I mean, there are some schools where they greatly take note of the demonstrated interest. There's others where they might notice it, but it doesn't go beyond that. But I always urge students, like, why not? Especially if we're focusing in on these schools that are their early decision 1 or 2, or some of these early action schools. It's like, it's really not going to hurt you. Another thing colleges do is they can track who opens emails. They can track who clicks on links. And so if you're kind of avoiding them or ignoring the things they're sending your way, you're really only hurting yourself in the long haul.
Yeah, no doubt. So in the course of helping a student kind of pick the grand list of schools, right? How many schools do you start with and whittle down? And then where do you guys find that sweet spot? Like, how many schools should a student apply to, in your opinion?
So as an advisor, I start just on my own end with like I cast a wide net of schools that I consider for a student. And then it becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. And the goal with the student and my interaction with the student is to focus in on those early apply options. So there's a lot of value in early decision 2. Some schools have single choice early action, restrictive early action. There's a lot of value there because the acceptance rate is typically much higher. So the percentage rate can be much higher if you apply early. So we focus in on, okay, if something is standing out to you as a place you want to be, and you're meeting the metrics, you're exceeding the extracurriculars, et cetera, you have a good profile for that school, let's make that the primary focus. And then we have an early acceptance pool, and then we have a regular decision. So I think it's about quality more than quantity. I know there's students and parents and families that want to apply to 30 or 40 schools, but I like to rein it in to maybe those, 10 to 12 and say, okay, let's focus on what really matters here, and let's make every application great.
And I want to ask a question, and I don't know if you know this or not, but it's a necessary question from my perspective because I deal a lot on the financial side of college. The genetic makeup of the families you deal with. Are you dealing with higher end families? We call them category 1, 2s, and 3s. And I'll give you a quick reference, and then maybe you can give me some insight because the advice varies based on that. Category 1's under 100K adjusted gross income. Like they're going to get financial need. They've got to look at different schools. Category 2 is your middle America. So 100K to let's say 350K adjusted gross income with some assets. And then category 3 is above that. Where are you guys playing in this game?
The majority of our clients are 2 or 3, I would say. Okay. That being said, we have expanded a lot more offerings to make it accessible to a lot more people. We do have some first gen students. We have a wide variety.
Got it. And the reason I ask that is not to isolate anything. It's just the advice in the college admissions side, right? We say if you picture a Venn diagram with 3 circles, it's the academic fit, it's the social fit, and it's the financial fit, right? And finding that right fit school is the one that hits those 3 from our perspective. And that's why I think our unique kind of twist on this in what we do is we're bringing finance to the table right off the bat. And there's an issue in not doing that. And this is not an issue of business models or anything. What I'm more meaning to talk about is if you go to your school's guidance counselor, right? And I don't discredit them or dismiss them as valuable resources, right? Because they have a lot of tools and stuff that they can use. But that person can never have a candid financial conversation with a family. So they can give you advice on maybe the best school you could get into, but have no idea whether you could actually afford to go there or what the debt situation is going to be on the way out. And so some of the conversation has to be around money, right? Because if it's not, you're talking about it, the debt crisis with college is real.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. And I think one thing we pride ourselves on is we like to get kids' applications so strong and so unique that a lot of times merit-based aid does just kind of pour into these kids. A couple application cycles ago, we had a girl that just received an entire full ride to Duke. She didn't apply for anything special. She didn't do anything special other than she really presented an excellent application. And she ended up getting offers like this from a lot of people. And that happens almost every single cycle. And then, of course, there's people like you, thank goodness, that help out with this conversation too, because it does have to be part of the discussion. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point you make. And one that I think people, they don't understand it. Right. The amount of times I hear from people, there's no money in higher, you can't get money. Like it's all just loans. It's all just money you have to pay back. We talk about green money and red money. Green money's free money. Red money's money that has to be returned. But these schools, right? If you think about the demographic environment that they're in, we have less students going to college. We still have the same amount of colleges. We're starting to see some consolidation, right? Schools are buying up other schools, and we're watching some of that happen. But some of these institutions that are 200 and 300 years old have massive endowment funds. They have money to give. They have to fill their seats, and they have to do it in a way that creates a solvent class, right? Each class has to be solvent. It has to hit the bottom line. So to go into this thinking there's no money is foolish, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And the way you put it, I love it, in creating that ideal, application, resume, essay, all of the components that someone gets to judge you on. take the time to do it, because you don't know who's on the other end of reading that can just check the box or say, this is my nomination for this scholarship, right?
Totally.
So in your opinion, what is the most critical thing to focus on for the student? Is it the application itself? Is it the extracurriculars? Is it the essay? Is it the test scores, the GPA? Give me your opinion here.
Oh, I wish there was only one. It would make life so much easier. I think in order to get to the point where we are creating a strong application, so, going into that senior year, the 3 years prior have to have had the most value. And so I would say, yes, metrics wise, colleges are looking at the GPA. They want to know that for whatever their tier of university is, you have matched the course rigor and the GPA standards that they have. And of course, people looking at top 10, those are going to be different than people looking at top 100. Yep. But I will say in today's world, your resume, your extracurriculars almost have to show that you're an expert in your primary area of interest. So if we have a student interested in psychology, for instance, we want to know that from 9th grade on, a lot of what they're doing is focused in on their interest and helping them grow in leadership within their interests. So they're starting a brand new club or organization. They're potentially conducting research with the university professor their sophomore and junior year. They're doing really high value things, and every year it's getting a little higher and a little higher, so that they're showing a college like, I genuinely care about this. I've in fact spent 3 years of my life doing this to prepare to go to your university. So I would say it's the resume and the GPA are kind of the primary things to consider.
Got it. And I love it, because the question that I think is, if I'm on a soccer field or a baseball field or softball, I have 4 children, so I'm constantly on fields coaching things. And the question that I get often is like, well, how many extracurriculars does my child need to do? And I'm like, you don't get it. It's not about how many, it's about how deep. It's about how involved they are, right? They want to see that progression from joining a club freshman year to being on the board sophomore year to creating a new event junior year and to being in leadership roles. They want to see a progression in whatever. And I love how you put it too, main area of interest, right?
Oh, yeah. And it's important to identify that early too. I think sometimes people think, well, I like these 5 things equally. And it's like, well, really, my job as an advisor is to find the most common themes and the intersection of common themes, so that we can say, okay, let's really focus your time, because gone are the days of I'm on the tennis team and I babysit and I'm in the school play and I walk dogs on weekends. And we're out of that application world and more into what do you care about and why, and let's increase your value there.
Yeah. And so do you ever advise that when you do have that passion and you prove it on paper through your application, that becomes the subject of an essay?
Well, the essay is an interesting topic, because it should, ideally, the personal essay should combine, that interest, that primary interest, but how it has shown its face in your life. So we like to take a specific story about your life, something that sets you apart, that also shows these admissions officers, oh, wow, so this primary academic interest actually is part of the personal life too, or here's how the student let this play out in their life.
Yeah, we always talk about the passion, right? They need to see the passion flow. And they, all honesty, some of the best essays I have read or edited or worked on with students have been essays of it was talking about mountain biking, and the way you could feel like you're riding down a mountain in this essay, and the passion comes through.
Oh yeah.
I'll never forget the most powerful intro I ever read on an essay was, I remember the first time I held a human brain. That was the first sentence of the essay, and the kid was going for pathology.
Well, there you go.
He wanted to be pre-med pathology, and you're going, okay, what did this actually happen? But it grabs you so hard. And then it talks about how, and for this particular student, he was exposed and able to go into a lab in his, sophomore and junior year of high school. And so that perfectly creates that intersection that you're talking about, where you have to, the passion is both personal and academic.
Well, yeah, and they do have to be connected. We had a student once write an essay, and it was about, you're caught in the middle of her playing soccer. She's on a soccer field and she sees that someone on the field gets a head injury. And all of a sudden now we transition out of the soccer field into her study of neuroscience. And she independently researched what a concussion means and how it affects a person long and short term, et cetera. So we know now she's an athlete. This is her passion, but she wants to use her talent and her skill to also study, the neurology behind athletic injury, perhaps. So it definitely combines both.
All right. So some questions for you. Best time to start planning for college?
Well, it depends on the student, of course, and on the goals. We always talk about goals. We always talk about what are you seeking. So I would say probably the most successful student we have are those that start early with us. So 9th or 10th graders we have. And the reason for that is because we can help them individually identify that narrative and then say, okay, here are our resources and people we can connect you with or ways we can help you reach out to start that resume building process. We also guide students on course selection. Mm-hmm. So, okay, what courses can you take that are going to suit you, not just fill your time? So really, we're getting that hands-on experience with them from 9th and 10th grade. That being said, we have people come to us at the end of 11th grade and we take what they have and we pull the max value out of it and we help them. But I would say earlier is better.
Yeah. And I mean, just as a kind of a side to that conversation, right? Anything that is a critical decision, the earlier you can start consideration towards that outcome, right?
Right.
Well, what do I really need to be thinking about? I don't know what I want to do. Well, let's help you figure that out. And that journey takes time, right?
Absolutely.
If you have time to experience things, you have time to understand what you like and don't like. But if you don't, and I talk about all the time. So as a coach, I talk about going into everything eyes up, right? It means just your eyes are open. You're paying attention, whether you're on a baseball field, a football field, doesn't matter, eyes up, right?
Right.
And I think life in general, you got to go in eyes up, right? Pay attention to what's going on around you. And there are moments that can turn into the passion. And if you're not paying attention to the moment, right, and you're not letting that intrigue ping like settle in and wow, that's interesting. If you don't embrace that and go after that, you may miss it, right?
Oh, and so, absolutely.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say we have students keep journals for this reason. We say, it doesn't need to be this like expansive, I'm writing a novel. What it needs to be is this is a moment that happened today that stood out to me. And here's why. And not only does it help students to like identify what they're interested in, we use that for content for essays, supplemental essays, personal essays, because those are tangible, descriptive things that stood out to them as being valuable to them. So I agree with you entirely.
Yeah. And I think on that same kind of level, right? If you're keeping a journal and you're paying attention to the things that are going on, you get an opportunity to reflect back. Right. And so, you get to this rat race, and we'll talk about the senior year, like the push where it just becomes like all on. You're in the heat of this. You've got deadlines. It's the first time you've had big projects and big deadlines. And like, this is the real deadline. And, the stress and the anxiety build up, and the kid doesn't want to talk to the parent, and we'll bring that where we can really have some benefit there. But at the same time, if you don't have that kind of reflective look back, that can only exaggerate the stress of the situation, right? So getting kids to do journals and pay attention to things takes some of the stress out of this situation.
Yeah, I noticed you had, I had listened to an episode you and Joe did about summer, how to utilize your summer. And that was something really valuable you said is like, think back 3 years. Do you remember like in detail something that happened? And no, I mean, the answer is no for all of us, unless it was this like massive part of our life. And yet, like, what a shame all the moments we miss because we don't take note of them.
And again, I'm not saying that these small moments will break by writing them down. What I'm saying is you can reflect back the memory jog and the reflection back. It may be something that happened 2 summers ago that you never gave consideration to. And then 2 summers later, you hit that chord and you're like, man, now I know what was going on there. And now it has a more meaningful impact. Right. So I love that. All right. In a broad kind of spectrum, right? You guys have the 7 steps of the college application process. for parents and students? What are they? Lay them out for us. And if there's a timetable, please enter that into the conversation as well.
Absolutely. So I like to think that there's 7 primary things that go into creating a successful application. When they start, how they start is really based on when we start working with a student or a student starts doing this independently. So the first, and I'm just going to list them, and if you want to ask more, feel free. But the first would be the narrative or the resume building. The second would be the academic strategy that specifically has to do with course selection and rigor. The third would be your testing strategy, so your SAT or ACT process. The fourth would be rec letters, guidance counselor, and often 1 to 2 teachers. The fifth is the school selection or the college list creation. The sixth would be the personal and supplemental essays. And then the 7th would be your strategic positioning or your major declaration per school. So that is sort of, in a nutshell, here's what this process looks like.
Thank you guys for being a part of College Knowledge. Just a reminder, if you're sending your student to school, visit elitecollegiateplanning.com for free resources and to book a free consultation.
And I think the point we were talking about prior to this was the earlier we can get on that. I mean, these seem like, oh, that's just 7 things. I can do it. No. I mean, the narrative itself takes an incredible amount of time. And it also, we're in the academic world, students are learn this, move on, learn this, move on, learn this. This is not a learn this, move on process. This is an entire build process where you're reflecting back to all the things that you did. So they take a lot of time. From the academic standpoint, right? And I'd love your opinion on this. I've talked to admissions officers. I've interviewed all kinds of people in this world. How much is too much in the academic rigor environment, right? So I'm seeing kids that they're sleep deprived, they're anxious, they're stressed out, they're taking, all of the hardest classes for what is the question. So coming back is, when's enough?
Yeah, you have to, it's different per student, but what you have to do is look at the personality of the student and you have to look at the student's goals. So if a student seems like they will have what it takes to do like a top 10, top 15 type of school. We look at the common data set, we look at the university website, and we see, okay, what is kind of the type of student they're accepting here? The GPA, the course rigor, the extracurriculars, et cetera. And then we say to that student, okay, so, your rigor has to be pretty high for this school, but we have to focus the rigor. I think sometimes people think, I'm going to do AP stats and I'm going to do AP bio, I'm going to do AP chem, and then I'm going to do, AP language, and but if your focus is, say, Spanish or French, and you want to focus in on that language, why are you taking 2 to 3 math APs in a year? It doesn't help them really in any way. In fact, we find that too much rigor in areas that don't matter can hurt because, like you said, you're up till 2 and 3 in the morning studying. You're waking up the next day. You don't do well on the test because what do you know? You got no sleep, et cetera. So it's the appropriate amount of rigor to feed your narrative and to maintain a high GPA. If your rigor is making your GPA drop, it is no longer valuable to you.
Bingo. I love it. And I want to just make impact on a point you made. We're defining the narrative, and now we're talking about academic pursuit, and we're talking about rigor, and it all comes back to the narrative. And so if you're not having that built and you're not working on this over a longer period of time, you're going to miss pieces of it, right? And now I'm not going to say that you're not going to get into school, right? It has nothing to do with whether you get into school or not. It's if you have a driven desire to go to a particular subset, start it in motion, right?
Absolutely.
It's not about like, yeah, you can go to college. I can get you into a school. I can promise I can get most people into a school, right? It's a matter of, are you getting in the school you want for the major you want to do the thing you want? And have you actually exercised what you want? And that's where the narrative to me comes in.
Yeah, of course.
So I'm gonna say it more simply, I think, and summarize your point and correct me if I'm wrong. The moment the academic rigor begins to diminish the GPA, you have failed at the mission of maintaining kind of your narrative, right?
Right. You probably need to take a look at your courses and say, is all this relevant?
Yeah. And I will tell this to all the parents out there. And I've heard it from admissions officers. I've heard it from the divisional people that travel around and represent schools, the representatives. I've heard it from the deans of honors colleges and everything else. If you're going to pursue an engineering degree, right? They would like to see you move up in the rigor of the curriculum offered in the math and the sciences.
Of course.
They're not necessarily, now I'm not saying don't take higher end English and learn how to write and communicate, because those are hard and soft skills that are absolutely necessary. But that's not going to affect the overall acceptance or rejection from a school. So if you go and say, I need to take 6 AP classes, which I think is entirely too many, but you do it, and 2 of them, one's history and one's English, and you're getting C's in AP history and English because you're a math-minded brain and going for engineering, you're not doing yourself any benefit.
No, you're not. Or if you're getting a C in AP physics as an engineering mind person because of all the AP histories you're taking, like what? You're not helping yourself at all.
And I think I asked this question, and I forget which interview it was, but I asked the question specifically to the chair of the department. And I said, would you rather have a B in an AP or an A in an honors? And they said, we'd rather have a B in an AP, but if you go much below that, we'd rather have you in the honors, right? And so the AB is okay, right? Because it shows a challenging curriculum. It shows you're working at it. But you get a C, and you've essentially negated the reason to even take the AP.
Well, and I think, and of course, different tiers of schools have different requirements. But I think the kind of more snarky sometimes answer you'll get is, well, we want the A in the AP. So,
well, yeah, no doubt about it.
Or the A in the honors. Give us the A in the AP. Which, okay, so we try for that, of course. But yeah, you're right. It's you have to be smart when you're choosing your courses.
So what are some of the things that to consider when you're adding a resume that didn't matter previously? And this is positioned to the parents, because what happened 25 years ago does not exist today. We are in a different environment. We're in a different world altogether. We've come through some interesting times. But admissions is a different ballgame, and higher ed's a different ballgame than it was, right? In price and in everything. So what's some of the stuff that you need to consider in high school to the resume that didn't happen previously?
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that, because parents can really help their student and relate more to their student, I think, if they understand that, the well-roundedness factor is not as valuable anymore. So students need to, like I said, be honing in on their specific interest or their intersection of interest. So for instance, we have a student interested in entrepreneurship, and he's starting his own business. We have students interested in science, and they, for 3 out of their 4 years of high school, are researching actively with university level professors. We have people interested in journalism, and they are the assistant or the intern to somebody at a major publication. So it's saying, okay, we don't start there. You're not a freshman and now you have this job. We're saying, let's get our grounding in an area. And then hopefully with every semester or with every summer, we're increasing, our leadership role or our impact in that field. Another thing to consider too is, because it's so competitive to get into college now, and because they're looking for experts, you have to weed out the extracurriculars that don't serve you. And this is a hard conversation to have with both parents and students, because sometimes that involves athletics or it involves the arts. If you're not focused, you're not going to be a recruited athlete. You now have essentially no return on investment on playing that sport. So it's balancing the mental and the personal wanting to do that with, well, how much time out of your life is this taking, such that now I can't create a strong resume because all I do is go to practice all day. Yeah. It depends on the circumstance.
Well, and there was another conversation I had, and man, I wish I had better recall as to who I was interviewing when I asked the question, but I said to, and this was an admissions officer, and it was, okay, so job, no job, sports, no sports, clubs, no clubs. And like, because it was about the well-roundedness. And he said, his answer was, I think, the best I've received yet, which was, if you're going to play a sport, I want to see you go from freshman to JV to varsity. It's showing the same, and maybe you get to be a captain. Man, you don't have to be the best athlete to do that, but it's showing that same kind of discipline, growth, team-oriented nature. You're showing it. And then he turned around and said, and work? some kids don't have an option to play sports.
Right.
Some kids their lifestyle does not allow that. They have to earn money or they can't do things, right? Because they're underprivileged, whatever it is, doesn't matter. He said, I want to see that they stay at a job, that they can take instruction, that they don't bounce from like, I was here. Hey, they stayed the course, they got some raises and they put in their time and discipline. And then it was the same answer to the clubs. Like the days of you're in robotics and you're in this and you're in that and they don't want to see it. It doesn't do anything to your advantage. It's about the depth with which you are involved in what you're involved in. And I'll give a perfect scenario of the sport thing, right? I was a baseball player. I was supposed to, at the time, William and Mary was that's where I was going. And it all fell through in the last hour. And so I ended up at Franklin and Marshall and I played baseball. But I got to a point with F&M where, I was a Division III baseball player. I loved it, but I also had a very rigorous dual major and I needed hours in the library and something was going to give. And, baseball ended up giving. And now I turned back and coached it a lot in my life and did private instruction after the fact. But the idea is you're going to have to make that decision at some point. I'm not encouraging anyone to stop playing sports because I believe sports teach as much as anything else. But at the end of the day, you're right. You have to be critical about that stuff, right?
Yeah, and you have to use it to your advantage. So for instance, let's say we have a student interested in sports and it just so happens that they're also interested in health and kinesiology. Wow. Okay. So now your sport actually is aiding you in your admissions angle. Let's use that sport, not just because it's a release or you enjoy it or it's social or it's active. Let's use it to feed your academic narrative. Now you're killing two birds with one stone. So there's plenty of ways to make it valuable.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You have to assess that.
And again, it comes down to the narrative and it comes down to the strategic nature of this process, right? And here's something else that I want to share with everybody. And I'm sure you've experienced this. And if you have, I'll ask you to share as well. But I have seen kids that didn't necessarily have what I thought academically it would take to get into some schools that they probably shouldn't have. And it was because of the critical approach and the strategic approach to getting into that school. Now, I'm not saying you can buck the system. I'm just saying that if you're taking if you're playing the long game and you're thinking critically about this, you can build yourself into the ideal candidate for a particular institution. It's not going to work at all of them, but again, I've been like, wow, because I've seen two kids, one that academically had it all, not get in, and one that academically was subpar, but got into that school. And it wasn't because clearly the grades weren't the issue at the institution. It was what else they were doing that added to it.
Right, absolutely. And I think what I said is one of the steps to think about the strategic positioning or the major declaration. That is a really crucial part of this process, because if you want to go to a competitive university and you want to declare the most competitive major within that university, you're limiting your chances hugely. So it's like, okay, maybe I'm not going to do computer science at MIT, where it's the acceptance rate is below 5%. What if I did data science or something about cognitive science or reasoning? So we're essentially taking a similar course rigor. We're taking similar classes. We're going to college for essentially the similar or same thing, but we're not declaring the number one most popular major at that school. Again, it's all strategic.
Yep, absolutely. From your perspective on, let's kind of switch gears a little bit, but best time to apply to the schools, and because you've got your early decision, your early action 1, early action 2. Some of them are rolling admission. Some of them are January 1, regular decision day. When do you want to be in the pile of applicants? Right? You want to be early, late? What's the strategy there from your perspective?
It doesn't make sense for every single student to do early decision. But for those that it makes sense for, there's a school that clearly stands out. We like to do that early decision school. So that November 1 deadline. I think at American University last year, the acceptance rate for the early admit pool was 85%, as opposed to a much lower general acceptance rate. So it's sort of, if it's clear that there's a school that's standing out to a student, we want to work for that. But I would say any school that offers early action, put your application in early action as opposed to the regular decision, because the admissions officers can give you a little bit more time. It's non-binding. So you can take it or leave it if you get the acceptance. But again, those acceptance percentages still remain a little bit higher than the regular pool. So the only time we would really advise like regular decision is if it's a school that doesn't have an early action option. It's really just ED or regular decision or rolling or something like that. But the earlier, the better.
Perfectly said. And just as a perspective for families that are listening, early action shows more than just the resume, right? It shows an intention. It shows a timeliness. It shows we talked about executive functioning at the beginning of the show. That's part of it, right? I'm ahead of the deadline. I've met the requirements I needed to meet, and I did it. And I'm more than anything, I'm motivated.
Of course.
Right? You wait and submit it on January 29th, January 30th, January 31st. I just got it in on the deadline. You're sending a message.
Oh yeah. And schools are flattered by it. They're like, oh, this, especially those early decision or those, single choice early action, et cetera. They're like, wow, okay. So this student's making it pretty clear. This is where they want to be. Let's give them the time of day and see if they're a good fit, Yeah.
And they again, I love the point you made too, is that the admissions officer that is tasked with making the decision gets a little bit more time because they're not flooded with 30,000 applications at that point,
Absolutely.
So when you're giving someone an early decision, are you guys talking at all about the expense outcome of that? As you say, hey, you go early decision, like here's some things you got to know.
Yeah, it's all laid on the line for families. And one of the good things about applying early decision is the parent and the guidance counselor have to sign off on this. So this is not a decision taken lightly. This is something that's discussed from just from an admission standpoint. Do you meet the criteria for this? Are you a good candidate for this? And here's the financial obligation you're going to be under is that if it's binding. So if you're getting in, you're going and you're understanding that I can afford to go here. I've made a plan to go here. So it's not to be taken lightly, but it's all discussed ahead of time.
Absolutely. And I wanted to make sure, I just wanted you to say it so it wasn't coming from me like a broken record again, where if you do go early decision and it will increase your chances of acceptance, there's no doubt on the admission side, it gives you a leg up where you might not otherwise get into the regular pool because there are less offers to make at that point. It gives you that, but there is certainly hey, if they say yes, you're saying yes. That means you're paying what you're asked to pay to go to that institution, right? Are there anything that you've experienced that are sort of modifications or changes that have occurred as you've been involved in this over the course of the last several years? Like, what have you noticed the most that is kind of shifting on this?
Well, college is certainly not becoming less competitive, A. And B, I think the most recent thing is that affirmative action ruling that just happened in the Supreme Court. So what has the biggest shift in this current application cycle are the essays are vastly different now. So if you look at the supplemental essays for schools, there are some schools that didn't have supplemental essays before that now do. There's schools that had the same kind of standard essays for years that are now the prompts are completely different. And so what you notice is a lot of schools are trying to get as much info from these candidates as they can. So it creates, it is a big full-time job to fill out these essays and to do it accurately. So that's definitely a recent shift we've seen. Well,
and to add to that, right, what the federal government is also doing with the FAFSA and the CSS profile, or really just the FAFSA, but they're minimizing the amount of information now that a college is going to receive. Right. And so the colleges have to get a little bit more strategic in how they look at information, right? And I believe you're going to see a large shift of schools going from just FAFSA only to CSS profile schools, because CSS profile still asks all the questions that these schools base their entire financial aid system on. And if you think about the financial aid is any money that you get from scholarships, grants, doesn't matter. Any money that is supporting you in going to college is considered financial aid, whether it's loans from the federal government or scholarships and grants from the schools. When you're giving out large buckets of money and you reduce the information that you used to give that money out based on, right, the schools are going to have to make shifts in that, right? And so I think it's an opportunistic time right now to get better deals than you may have otherwise, because the schools are kind of going, well, I guess we got to give some money out. Like we got to do this to get these applicants to come, because as you talked about, the competitive nature of it is real. So the students are the buyers, right? And the parents are the buyers, and the schools have to market themselves to these people. And what's the easiest way to leverage somebody is to make it less expensive than you thought it was going to be. And okay, I'm taking that. It's kind of that efficiency of the dollar thing going on.
Absolutely.
Are there any hidden factors that admissions officers look for? Like what's the stuff in the periphery that people may not think about?
I don't know if there's anything hidden or that they're keeping, but I think that part of this goes back to that demonstrated interest, is that they just assume they're paying attention to it. Just assume that even if they don't put it out there, like, come see us or click on the email link, even if it's not in your face, you should still be doing it because like it or not, they're noticing it. And another thing is anytime something is optional when it comes to admissions, especially like I'm talking in terms of like an interview, do it. Ask to do it, right? Especially these evaluative ones, which are typically given by alums or even admissions officers themselves. Do the interview. Prepare for the interview. Treat it like it's a professional job interview, because in that circumstance, optional actually isn't, or it shouldn't be seen that way. So pay close attention to stuff like that.
Yeah, it's optional only if you don't want to go. Right?
Exactly.
I mean, the end result is they're looking to see, are you really motivated? And when I talk about the algorithms that they're using, it's like, okay, the person visited the school, check that box. The person opened this email. The person was on this live Facebook Live. The person was on this event. The person did an interview. Like, okay, they did everything that was offered to them to engage with our institution. There's a high probability that person is interested because they're tracking these metrics every year. And so when they start to see like a change, if you click the 5 boxes, you've got a 89% likelihood of going. If you only click 2 of them, you've got a 25 or 22%. Like they're watching that stuff.
Yeah, it doesn't help. And also test optional. Just keep in mind, yes, test optional. But if your score falls at about the 50th percent or higher for people admitted to that school, send it. It's not going to hurt you to do so.
Absolutely. I had a thought and it slipped my mind now.
Cut you off. Sorry.
No, it's good. It was in response to the kind of hidden stuff there. I think anything optional is really not optional if it's actually an institution you want to go to. Mm-hmm. Have you had any experience recently with the safety, target, and reach school environment that exists? And have you seen a shift in any of that?
Mm-hmm. We do like to categorize things in that way. When we're first creating a school list is the safety, target, and the reach. And I think it's valuable to have schools in each of those. But again, I don't put a ton of weight on like how many are in each category, and let's just apply to everything so that we can get in somewhere. It's like, fine, we've got our safety, our target, our reach. Now let's hone it in and pare it down a little bit to where we think we have the best chance, especially early.
Yeah. And I want to make a comment on the safety school. Mm-hmm. The old version of the safety school doesn't exist anymore, right? Which was you're guaranteed to get in. If you don't do the demonstrated interest part and then you just send an application out of the blue, it's not going to work out the way you want. You're going to go, wow, I can't believe I didn't get into the school. So you don't, even if it's a safety, if it's a target, if it's a reach, treat them the same in the application process. Don't go, oh, well, this is my safety school. So, I don't have to do much other than just go.
No. And that's why we say quality over quantity, because if you're really focused on quantity and you think, oh, I have all these safeties, it's fine. You're probably not producing a great result. It's not going to help.
No, without question. Love it. All right. Well, we're about out of time. Any final advice for parents, students in this process that you'd like to share?
I just want to say, the guidance counselor, going back to that conversation, they have a very important job. At some of the larger schools, they have hundreds of students they're dealing with. So I do think that there is some value in finding some help, like the things that you and I do to cater to the interest of the student and to help them bring out the best of who they are to these colleges. And I would urge parents and students to, like you said, to start early and to be thinking about what is the interest, what is the goal, and let's create the most value of these next few years.
Yeah. And parents, if you're listening, right, it's not that we want you out of the process and we want the kid only in the process. The point I'll make to you is that if you show up at the end of their junior year and you come hot and heavy about college and you've had no previous conversations, you are going to face the shutdown mode of an adolescent teenager, and they're not going to want to talk to you about it. But if you slow play it and you engage and you don't make it all about college, but you make it all about, the narrative or the things that you're interested in, you're having those conversations, it makes it so much easier when you get there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think if your child has a passion and you see it and it's clear, feed it, help them to continue with that. Absolutely.
And Julie, if people want to look you up, where do they go to find you?
So you can go to our website, westchesterprep.com, and within there you will see the college advising and Great Minds Advising. You can kind of read all of our profiles, get to know a little bit more info. We're also on Facebook and Instagram at Great Minds Advising. And you can join our newsletter too.
Perfect. One last question.
Yes.
Are you working with students and teaching them how to deal with this social media?
Yes.
And cleaning, what do we call it, cleaning up social media, right? As they go through this.
Yeah, that's an important thing to discuss because anybody can find anything about anybody, right? So it's important to have a clean social media presence. It's important to have an email address that is clean and professional, not something silly or that you're going to regret sending to schools, right? It's important that anything about you online is going to help you and not hurt you. And actually, one of the biggest reasons that colleges rescind admission sometimes or take it back is because they find things that they don't like on social media. This happens regularly. So pay close attention to that. Yeah.
And we always say, if you start on social media, and I'm not going to give my opinion of when you should start social media. I'm just saying, if you have social media, if from the beginning you think of your social media in terms of, if you wouldn't want your principal, your high school, or your parents to see it, don't like it, post it, copy it, do it. Right?
No, don't do it.
Make it things that you're proud of. Awesome stuff. All right, Julie, this has been fantastic. We're going to shut her down there. I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you, Dave, for having me. It was a good conversation.
All right, guys, this has been College Knowledge. Until next week, we'll catch you then.
We can send your student to the school of their dreams and send you to your dream retirement. Visit us at elitecollegiateplanning.com to get started. Thanks for listening to the College Knowledge Podcast with your hosts, Dave Kozak and Joe Kearns. We hope you enjoyed this week's exploration of higher education, sponsored by the College Planning Network and Paradigm Financial Group. That's all for this episode. See you next time.